Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another season predictions video. The team that we're going to be taking a look at today is our 2024 Georgia Bulldogs. We're going to go game by game, try to predict the outcome for every single game, the final win-loss records, as well as the score for every game. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. What we're doing this offseason is we're going over every single team, looking at their schedule, trying to predict that final win-loss record. And once the regular season starts, every week we go over every game. We do the money lines, spreads, and the over-unders. And we also do the same thing for every NFL game once the NFL season starts as well. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. Like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at our 2024 Georgia Bulldogs schedule. There's no need to have to introduce them. Obviously, we all know who the Georgia Bulldogs are. This is the number one rated total roster in all of college football, according to ESPN. You have probably the three best rosters. You have Georgia, you have Alabama, and you have Ohio State. You can swap them in any order that you want. It really doesn't matter. These teams are loaded with 5 and 4 stars. Lots of 5-star players. Georgia lost a lot of players to the NFL draft, but it's next guy up. They're loaded with 5-star players at every single position, especially the skill positions. They lost Bowers. They lost McClunky. But it doesn't matter. They have the next guys coming up. You have Dominic Lovett. You have Arian Smith. You have the transfer from Miami, Colby Young. Next guy up, and it's a running back by committee. They're going to be loaded at the wide receivers. There's Thomas, Bell. Like I mentioned, Lovett. You have Trevor Etienne Jr. transferring over from Florida. His backup, Robinson II. Lots of playmakers there. Who's going to step up? Georgia has always had a loaded defensive staff, defensive side of the ball. But Bobo and Carson Beck last year, that was probably the best passing Georgia team we've seen on record. Carson Beck just barely missed 4,000 passing yards. I think he missed it by 50 yards. I think he's going to get over that. I think there's going to be an extremely pass-heavy team, a very modern offense. He's probably going to throw for over 4,000 yards. As of right now, he's the Heisman frontrunner for the 2024 college football season, so he's definitely going to put up some stats. He has the playmakers there. He has the defense to rely on. But this schedule, it's god-awful. It is a gauntlet, lots of ranked teams that they're going to have to get through. So there will be challenges there, but with the expanded playoff, Georgia, for once, can afford to drop one game, maybe even potentially 2 games with how deep the SEC is, and still make the playoffs. If they win the SEC, they get the bye week. They automatically get into the playoffs. This isn't going to be like last year. They're not going to get cheated out. They're going to have a chance. I pretty much think everyone has Georgia making the playoffs. It's the only question is, what's their seeding going to be? As I mentioned, though, this team is loaded top to bottom, loaded on offense, loaded on defense. Everyone has them or Ohio State flip-flopping right now for the number 1 or 2 position right now to start the regular season. But let's go ahead and get things started. So let's take a look at this 2024 schedule. Kicking things off, our very first game, August 31st in Atlanta, Georgia, we have the Clemson Tigers coming into the state of Georgia. Clemson is obviously one of those teams that has been at the top of college football for about the last 10 years now. Now, they've taken a little bit of a step back the last couple of years, but obviously this is a team with one of the best head coaching staffs in all of college football. They have Dabo Swinney. They have a really good defense. They had a top 10 defense from last season. They're going to be bringing that same defense back. They also still have Garrett Riley there as the offense coordinator. He's one of the best young minds in college football right now. And they have a lot of returning playmakers coming back on both sides of the ball. The defense, as we stated, is loaded, but they're going to have a really stacked offense too. Cade Klubnik was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. He had a pretty good season last season, but he hasn't fully lived up to the hype so far. But do not take this game for granted. Clemson, they're trying to get out of the ACC. They want to show their chops. They want to show how strong they are to the rest of the country. What better way than to beat the potential number 1 team, Georgia Bulldogs, first game of the year? Clemson has beaten Georgia before. Georgia has beaten Clemson before. But when you have 2 top 10 defenses going at it, anything can potentially happen, because if one defense has the edge that day, they could shut the game down. This is not going to be a blowout, but I still have Georgia. They have the better quarterback play. They have the better roster, not knocking Clemson's roster, But I have Georgia winning this game in a really close one, though. I'd say it's probably going to be like a 28-20 win. So starting out the season 1-0. And next, September 7th, we have Tennessee Tech. There's really not much to say this game. This game's obviously not going to be close in any way whatsoever. It's going to be a blowout. Curb stomping. This is Georgia's first game home this season. They're going to beat Tennessee Tech. It's going to be probably like a 58-6 game. After that, we're getting into SEC play now. September 14th at Kentucky. They'll be playing Kentucky. Kentucky's one of those teams every single year. They roar out to 5-0, 6-0, completely fall apart after that. Finish, 7-5 or 6-6. They're always overrated. Stoops, really good coach. They're going to have a very physical run game. They're going to have a very physical defense and a good defensive line. That's one thing that they always do well. But obviously, the talent here, there's a massive disparity. These teams are nothing alike, except the fact that they're physical. Stoops might be able to keep the game close, maybe for the first quarter. That's about it. Kentucky is always overrated, but you don't want to overlook them. Because of how physical they are, they can punch you in the mouth. But the problem is Georgia can obviously punch back, and they can punch a lot harder. Georgia's going to win this game. I could see this game maybe being like I think they're going to win it pretty good. So like a 34-35 to 17 game. So Georgia right now will be 3-0. Then September 21st, they're going into a bye week. And then one of the biggest games of the season, hands down, this is going to be a potential top 5 matchup, top 10 matchup. We have Georgia at Alabama. They're going to Tuscaloosa playing the Alabama Crimson Tide. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Saban, the GOAT himself, has retired. His whole coaching staff left. A lot of players transferred out. But Alabama still has a top 3 roster in all of college football. So even though some guys are out, even though the coaching staff has changed, do not overlook this roster. Milroe, as of right now, he's still the quarterback there. They're bringing in Kalen Deboer as the head coach. Kalen Deboer is an offensive guru, a really good coach. But obviously the GOAT just left. So you have to anticipate a little bit of a step back because he is the GOAT. But that's not a knock on Kalen Deboer. He will cement himself, but it's just how quickly will he be able to transfer this roster over to his style of play, over to that more of an air raid type offense. Georgia at this point has had a couple games, has had a really tough game, so things are kind of starting to roll right now. The defense is starting to look really good. The offense is starting to get things going. Guys are stepping into the position to replace Bowers and stuff like that from last year. So the guys have had a couple weeks to find their roles. But they should be getting into that point right now, getting closer to midseason where they're starting to roll. This is going to be a really close game. This is probably going to be, going into the fourth quarter as a one-possession game. I have Georgia having the edge here. I have Georgia getting the win in this matchup. I have them beating Alabama. It is going to be close. But I'm going to say like a 32-27 game. Very close game. Do not overlook it. Potentially whoever has the ball last can win this game. As of this point, Georgia is 4-0. Next game, we have Auburn. So Auburn will be coming to Georgia. Auburn, Hugh Freeze. Last year they had a pretty decent defense, but their offense was a complete joke. They have Thorne at quarterback. Hugh Freeze has been working the transfer portal really hard. Look for their offense to be a lot better. Hugh Freeze is back to play calling himself this season. He's really good on offense. He's not afraid of Georgia. He was never afraid of Saban when he played Saban. He's not going to be afraid of Kirby Smart. That doesn't mean he's going to win the game just because he's not afraid of them, but that lets you know the mentality that he brings in with his team. But I have Georgia winning this game pretty comfortably. I'm going to say like a 35-13 game. It's not going to be close. After that, we have Mississippi State. Mississippi State, obviously, Levy is now the head coach. Massive changes on both sides of the ball for Mississippi State. Completely retooling. The roster was not good in any way. Arnett did not leave this team in a good place. So Levy has to completely rebuild it, especially on the offense. They in no way have the athletes or the firepower to in any way make this game competitive. That's not saying that they won't in the future. He knows how to call offense, but it's just he just doesn't have the guys there yet. So Georgia should win this game pretty convincingly, and I think it's going to be pretty bad. I'm going to say like a 40-13 game. So as of right now, Georgia 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0, and then another really tough game right after that at Texas. Going to Austin, Texas. Welcome to the SEC. Georgia, another potential top 5, top 10 matchup here, playing the Texas Longhorns, who are going to come into this season highly ranked to start things out. Texas's roster is not very far behind Georgia. Texas definitely is not going to be afraid of Georgia. They went to Tuscaloosa, beat the crap out of Alabama last season. They know they can do it. They have Quinn Ewers at quarterback. He's played on the big stage. They went to the playoffs last season. He knows what he can do. They're going to be, they had some running back issues last season at the end of the season. Had a lot of guys get hurt. Had their starter tear his ACL. He should be back. The wide receiver position, they're losing Worthy, but they have a lot of playmakers. They had a top 20 defense also last year, led by their defensive line. They got a lot of pressure. Texas is physical. Sarkisian's going to be dialing up some plays. They're going to be going vertical. This is a trip-up game here. Even though Georgia, I mean, these rosters are almost practically even. There's a lot of positions where they're basically the same. Texas, you know, they want to make their footprint in the SEC, a new conference, a deeper, better conference. I'm actually going to go with Texas getting the win here. Georgia will probably be a slight favorite, 1.5 points, but you never know. But I'm going to go with Texas getting the upset. They're at home. This game's going to probably be at night. Texas is going to be really fired up. They're going to, if there's any game on their schedule, they definitely want to win. It's this one. Georgia can't afford to lose it. 12 teams are getting in the playoffs. So no matter what, Georgia's probably going to make the playoffs this year. There's not as much riding on this. They are definitely going to try to win it. But if they lose, it's not the end of the world. So don't worry. Then they have a bye week. Then you obviously have the game versus Florida. In Jacksonville here, you have the Florida Gators, who Billy Napier, I don't really know what to say. He's probably potentially going to be getting fired at the end of the season. They have a really rough schedule, probably the toughest schedule in the country. They're probably not going to get a bowl game back-to-back seasons. They made this game, somewhat competitive last season. They're definitely going to fight. It's a massive rivalry, one of the biggest rivalries in college football. But I have Georgia winning it pretty comfortably. I'm going to say they win it maybe like a 33-21 game. And the Texas game, I have being really close, like a 30-27. So after Georgia beats Florida, they then have Ole Miss going to Ole Miss, Oxford, Mississippi. This game's obviously going to be really tough. Ole Miss, they're going to be another top 10 matchup. Ole Miss is going to be really good this season. They work the transfer portal really hard. They have Lane Kiffin. He's obviously going to have a top 25 offense. He has a lot of offensive players coming back. Yes, they lost Quinton Junkins to Ohio State, but they honestly don't need him. They're deep at running back. They have the quarterback. They have the wide receivers. Their defense is going to be a lot better. They really work the defense and the defensive line and secondary in the transfer portal. How quickly can those guys adapt? No matter what, at this point of the season, they should have adapted to the new play calling. So they should be rolling along. Don't overlook this game. They want to win this game. They got spanked last season in this game. But I have Georgia winning again this season. I'm going to have Georgia winning. Maybe this game could potentially have some points to it. I'll have Georgia winning like a 38-27-28. So as of right now, Georgia is sitting at, how many wins is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-1. So they're probably still in the top 5, if not just slightly out of it. Then they have Tennessee, another tough matchup. Tennessee's probably going to be ranked at this point of the season. Under Josh Heupel, this team's always going to have a really good offense. Last year, they actually surprisingly had a really good defense. They had a top 30 defense. They're bringing back a lot of starters. They have the 5-star coming in at quarterback. He's going to be the starter. Played really well in the bowl game, filling in for Milton. They're going to have the playmakers there. Tennessee's played the big games, but Tennessee's coming to Athens, Georgia, and Georgia's just a better, deeper team, better roster, better total coaching staff. I have Georgia getting the win here versus Tennessee. Probably about a 32-20 game. And then after that, they have UMass, What is there to say here? UMass has basically won, 3 games the last 2 years total. UMass is going to get spanked. It's the UMass Minutemen. This game's going to be close maybe for the first minute. That's about it. They're going to get it blown out. It's probably going to be a 55-3 type game. Then they have to end the season. They're now sitting at 10-1. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech made this game really close last year. Some people say that Georgia should have lost it, could have definitely lost it. They did win the game, but Georgia Tech, they are going to be there to fight. They had a really good season last season. They win 8 or 9 games last year. They were a surprise team. They had that win versus Miami. They had the win versus North Carolina. They had some really competitive wins, and they played Georgia tough because they believed that they could actually compete with Georgia. But really, they caught Georgia hurt that game, Georgia limping into the game, not taking the game seriously, and they made Georgia work for it. They made them pay for overlooking them. I don't think Georgia does that again this year. They want to finish with a high note going into the SEC championship. I had Georgia beating Georgia Tech pretty good, probably like a 40-20 game. And that would end the regular season at 11-1. Obviously, that's probably going to get you into the SEC championship. I have Georgia, as of right now, with what we know on this roster, finishing the 2024 college football season 11-1, going into the SEC championship. Who are they going to play? The next highest-ranked SEC team. It's a deep conference. There's going to be good teams. It could be a rematch with Texas. They have the opportunity to make up for that loss, beat Texas. Maybe they're potentially playing Alabama again. If they play Texas, then I would probably give the edge to Georgia because they would have lost the first time. So now they would know what they need to fix to beat Texas. If they beat Texas the first time, I'd probably put my money on Texas because likewise with them, they would now be the ones fighting and they would know what they need to do to correct their issues they had the first game. But no matter what, Georgia's going to finish the regular season 11-1. They're obviously going to make the playoffs no matter what happens in the SEC championship. Win or lose, they make the playoffs this year. It's just, do they get that bye week first round? So that's my breakdown of the 2024 regular season. Way too early predictions for the Georgia Bulldogs. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks.